would like to invite to the stage Jonathan Reichwald, Director of Industry, Construction and Manufacturing at the Department of Jobs, Skills, Industry and Regions, Professor Regina Crameri, Victorian Defence Industry Advocate, and Scott Edwards, Director of Medical Research, Health Tech and Innovation Programs at the Department of Jobs, Skills, Industry and Regions. So I'm going to ask, I've given you our guests' titles, their formal jobs, their formal titles, but just to ease into the session, I might ask each of our panellists to introduce themselves and just talk a bit about what they do from day to day. So I'll start with you, Scott.
Thanks very much, Lorraine. All working okay? Yeah, fantastic. Scott Edwards, lovely to be joining you all today. This is a fantastic opportunity. Look, I'm a physiotherapist by background, actually. This is my second career as a bureaucrat in government, and I'm super excited about the opportunities in the health technologies and medical research sector, and looking forward to sort of sharing a few thoughts and experiences with you during the course of the next half an hour or so.
Thanks, Scott. Regina.
Yeah, thanks, Lorraine. Regina Crameri, I'm the Victorian Defence Industry Advocate, so I'm here on behalf of the Victorian Government to really promote the Victorian defence sector, a long-serving Defence Science and Technology Group scientist for about 20 years, so deeply embedded into the S&T area, and really proud to bolster the state's Victorian defence sector.
Thanks, Regina. Jonathan.
Thanks, Lorraine. Good to be here. Jonathan Reichwald. I look after industry policy for Victoria. And what does that look like on a week-to-week basis? The Minister mentioned before that we're going to release a new Victorian industry policy in the next few weeks, which is really exciting. So my team's been heavily involved in authoring that. And on a day-to-day basis, we also provide advice to ministers and cabinet on how intersecting policies across government impact industry, impact manufacturing, and also how we can help to support the growth of the sector.
Thanks, Jonathan. Can I just ask up the back, can you actually hear quite well? Do we need any more volume? You're right? Okay, good. It's just me. I haven't got speakers down here, so it's a little bit harder to hear. Jonathan, I'll ask you the first question. What is the Victorian Government doing to ensure that business conditions are strong for the manufacturing sector?
Thanks, Lorraine. The Minister stole a little bit of my thunder before in his speech, but he mentioned the economic growth statement, which was released in December last year. And the statement, I'll go into a little bit more detail about some of the aspects of that piece of work, and in particular on regulation, which we know can be a real barrier for innovation, but also some of the absolute fundamentals that industry need to survive. So they need land, they need energy, and they need skills. In terms of regulation, though, I'll just touch on a couple of things. The government's made a really bold commitment to halve the number of regulators by 2030. The intent there is to make it a hell of a lot easier, a lot less touch points for business, so that they can get approvals to invest and expand. And that's an absolute fundamental, which we recognise as possibly being a little bit too challenging for business to navigate in the past. Along with that, we've introduced an Investment Coordinator General, whose sole job is to help navigate economic projects through the regulatory process to reach approvals, and that includes, often very complex things like environmental effects statements, etc. The other elements here are an investment front door. I mentioned reducing the number of touch points for industry to interact with government. The introduction of an investment front door is going to make it much easier for government, for business to come in, hit one touch point, and then be supported to navigate government whichever way they need to go, whether that's through regulation, whether that's through grants and assistance, through export, etc. The skills side's really important, Lorraine. So skills, this government's invested heavily in free TAFE, and we've also invested heavily in some shared use facilities such as Manu Futures at Deakin in Geelong, the Factory of the Future at Swinburne. So these open source pieces of infrastructure is really important for manufacturing, so that businesses of all sizes, not just the large ones, have access to sort of innovation infrastructure. And I'll just finish on commercialisation. We've invested heavily in the Launch Vic, but we've also invested heavily in direct industry investment through Breakthrough Victoria. And advanced manufacturing is a priority sector through Breakthrough Victoria, and they invest directly in companies to commercialise and and grow.
Well, that is a beautiful segue to Scott's question, which is about the health technology sector. And I note that Breakthrough Victoria has been really caring about what's going on in the medtech sector, making a few investments there. So what else is the Victorian government providing to assist Victorian manufacturers in that particular segment?
Yeah, thanks so much, Lorraine, for the question. And look, health technologies is a really important driver of the Victorian economy. And as Minister Brooks was referencing earlier in his talk around the economic growth statement, one of the key priority sectors, one of the 5 priority sectors that is named, is health technologies and medical research. That's a really important step for the Victorian government to be recognising that convergence of those two ends of the development spectrum, and manufacturing is so critical to that, as is clinical trials and a regulatory environment. But we have really, really strong medical research institutes and universities driving a lot of local intellectual property development here in Victoria, and how we can translate that into impact is a really important piece of the puzzle. $3.8 billion a year in exports in health technologies to Victoria. I think we've got 58 therapeutic goods administration, GMP grade manufacturers in health tech here in Victoria. 40% of ASX listed health technology companies are here in Victoria. So there's plenty to be able to grapple onto. In terms of supports, though, into Lorraine's question in particular, clearly Breakthrough Victoria and LaunchVic is a centrepiece of Victoria's support. But there are other ways that in health technologies, the state's been supporting manufacturing in recent times and continues to. So one is in 2021, there was a 3-year commitment around the Australian MedTech Manufacturing Centre, which is a $20 million investment. That work continues on, and one of the most exciting pieces of that work that continues on is through the Australian MedTech Manufacturing Alliance that the Melbourne network and a number of industry partners are helping to facilitate. It's really important for the medical technologies and devices market. It's industry-led, which is also really exciting, and helping to unlock opportunities for local product purchasing, and also international markets opening up for Victorian manufacturers in that space. The state government also, through its various vehicles, has supported major pharmaceutical and health tech companies to secure down here and embed themselves in Victoria. So we have a really long-standing partnership with CSL, and really want to draw out their longevity and excellence. So their plasma fractionation plant, and also new vaccine production capabilities in Tullamarine and in Broadmeadows, like suburbs of Victoria, are really, really exciting. mRNA is a new segment that many of you have benefited from vaccines during COVID. Certainly I have. And so mRNA, the establishment of mRNA Victoria as a vehicle to wrap around services and help to attract Moderna and BioNTech to market is really impressive, and sets a really good scene for a whole range of opportunities in further development. We have a number of other investments as well in areas like the Australian Australian Centre for Medical Discovery in St Vincent's Hospital, which is on the northern corner of Parkville. The southern corner of Parkville. It's a centre of excellence for basically integrated with a hospital and for prototyping medical technologies. So once that building is operational, and it's already going up for those of you that are staying in Melbourne or visiting for the first time in a while, you'll be able to see the building just on the St Vincent's Hospital campus, and that's a really important interface with industry. As well as the Industry Research and Development Infrastructure Fund, which is a $15 million fund out of the Made in Victoria work. And that's a really important opportunity, and we've to date supported 9 companies, including Quantum Brilliance and CCRM Australia. Quantum Brilliance, of course, also through Breakthrough Victoria. So there's a bit of a smattering of, I guess, current investments and opportunities for manufacturers in the state.
Yeah, thank you. And I just noted your comments about the MedTech Manufacturing Alliance. We'll have the CEO of Buy Melbourne Network, who's leading that work on behalf of the Victorian Government, with us at 12 o'clock today on this stage to talk about that alliance, of which AMTIL is a partner in that as well. So thank you, that's great. Let's turn now to another important area of manufacturing, defence, and a growing area of manufacturing, to talk about what the Victorian Government is doing in that space.
Yeah, thanks, Lorraine. And I know the Minister did talk about, and Jonathan spoke about the economic growth statement, but it's the first time that that the Victorian Government have called out defence as a priority sector, and we're really proud of that. And it's underpinned by data. You spoke about data in your speech, and can I congratulate you on an amazing show? It's fantastic here, and a lot of our defence companies here, they probably won't name themselves as defence companies because it's about that resilience that you spoke about. But following the economic growth statement, Minister Brooks, who stole most of my thunder earlier, never follow a minister, as note to self, we released the Victorian Defence Vision, and it articulated three things, and that is the Victorian Government wants to secure more local and international investment in defence, and that then allows our supply chain to grow, and we are really committed to doing that. The other thing that we want to do, and particularly in that manufacturing piece, is to build that resilience, because we know defence supply chain is lumpy. You can be, really at the top of your game, and then the contract might fall off. So we need to be able to build that, and the Victorian Government are committed to doing that through various programs. The other piece that you really did speak about was that skilled piece, and we hear it all the time. I'm out visiting our local manufacturing companies. The skills piece is really critical. What the Victorian Government have now done is really looking at that veterans pathway. We see so many of our veterans come out of the ADF. They are highly skilled. They know production, project management better than anyone else. Their strategy is second to none, and yet we're letting them bypass our advanced manufacturing sector. So I would call out to anyone out there, if you're looking for skilled labour, go and tap your vets on the shoulder and say, you're looking for a job, mate, because I think I've got one for you. And segued with that free TAFE, you're probably going to have a really capable employee for a very long time that can contextualise that defence sector for you. And the other one that the Victorian Government do is really support trade shows like this. So bringing our international investors in to see, for example, Avalon International Air Show, 70 Victorian defence companies were on our floor. That was the largest contingent, and it had increased by 25%. So, we really have 40% of all supply chain in Australia is from Victoria. So you talk about the strength here. And the last one, and I know Morelli's in the room, is funding the Victorian Defence and Space Network. So if you're really interested in becoming part of that, because defence is a tricky sector to get into, but once you're in and you're trusted, you've got a pretty good supply chain. So feel free to join that as well.
Right. Thanks, Regina. Can we stay with you for a moment and talk about financial support programs in the space?
Yes. Let me go with some very tangible ones. I mean, we can talk about, funding trade shows, which are incredibly important and have that second order of effect. But we have the Victorian Land Victorian Land Systems, I'll get it right. And that is really to support Hanwha, who are one of our Korean investors who produce both the Redback and the Huntsman. And vaccines are cool, but there's nothing better than a land vehicle, I'm telling you. So defence is bringing sexy back, I'm just saying. We have two programs that sit under that. One is the SCIP, the Supply Chain Investment Program, and that's really about helping our manufacturing companies, particularly to invest in capital investment, to invest in prototyping, evaluation, and getting them into that supply chain. As I said, most of our companies are dual use. They do other manufacturing for other companies outside of defence, and it's bringing those great companies into the defence supply chain. And the second one is the SCUP, which is the Supply Chain Uplift Program. Because guess what? Defence cares about our security. So that fund is up to 100,000 K. Yeah, that's 100 there, 100,000. I'll get it right. I've just tripled the budget of the Victorian Government. And it's about getting you both your online and your physical security up to date. And the other thing about being in the defence supply chain is you've got to get your ISO accreditations. So it's about uplifting that as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Scott, we'll go to you again. What are the areas of emerging technologies that we might see future opportunities for Victorian health tech companies?
Yeah, I think Hanwha is inventing a land forces vaccine for that. Definitely. Look, there's lots of really great emerging things going on. Thanks, Regina. Historically, Victoria has been supporting pharmaceuticals and drug discovery, and that doesn't go away. So the state's invested up to $400 million in establishing a new Australian Institute for Infectious Diseases in Parkville, which is bringing together the University of Melbourne with the Doherty Institute and the Burnet Institute. A really fantastic opportunity. That centre will also be housing the coming Global Centre for Pandemic Therapeutics, which will be focused on sort of therapeutic treatments for diseases of pandemic potential. So obviously a really fantastic location to be developing new and supporting IP. We've got drug discovery programs out of the likes of the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute, and the federal government has been supporting as well the National Drug Discovery Centre. So we think there's a really healthy pipeline of opportunity coming out of that. But our internal analysis has also been pointing to a number of different emerging opportunities, and that's certainly where manufacturing can come in a big way, whether that's at the clinical grade manufacturing end or in the in-market end, because it's really healthy and helpful to have this end-to-end flourishing of different segments. So some of those segments that you may be aware of or following closely are potentially thinking about are areas like cell and gene therapies. So we've got Australia's only GMP manufacturer, cell therapies within the Peter Mac Cancer Centre. So that's a really exciting proposition, but we also have a plethora of medical research associated with that at Murdoch Children's Research Institute and elsewhere. Other areas include radiopharmaceuticals. It's a really interesting, unique production process. Radiopharmaceuticals, there's expertise across Australia. But what's really exciting about it is that you can use these radioisotopes to treat and diagnose cancers and a range of other diseases. So Telix and Cyclotech and some of these companies locally, we're really excited about their opportunity and their support that they can do. Digital health as well, and health. The state government partners with End Health, and they have a range of different really exciting propositions, ranging from the apps all the way through to the really complex stuff. Neuroimplantables. Victoria has been at the forefront of innovation in developing the bionic ear. Didn't derive all the value within the state, of course, but it's a fantastic, life-changing, impactful area. And of course, Cochlear is one of our huge success stories as a nation. So, the next generation of opportunities in that space we're watching closely as well. The diagnostics are also a big one, and probably the last one to note, which sort of flies under the radar a little bit, is nutraceuticals and supplements. And if you look at Swiss and some of the consumer market sentiment, particularly overseas, and the trustworthiness with which Swiss and other companies like them are developing their supplements and nutraceuticals, it's a really valuable opportunity to look at. So there's some of the emerging opportunities, all underpinned by AI and quantum and more efficient processes, of course, and things that we're watching out for.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Takes me back. My former role was in biotech and medtech, so I feel like I was just thinking about Mark Cook and Epiminder just got FDA approval. It's fantastic seeing a Victorian-born technology making it to world regulation.
So true, Lorraine. And Professor Mark Cook, a huge hero of the sector, and I think there was a recent article in one of the major newspapers on the development of their work.
Yeah, brilliant. Jonathan, we haven't heard from you for a bit, so let's change area altogether and talk about affordable housing and what advanced manufacturing can provide for affordable housing.
Thanks, Lorraine. That's a really important question. Housing, I'll talk about the construction sector broadly for a moment. So productivity in the construction sector is lower than it was in 1990 across Australia. which is quite remarkable, really. And therein lies the opportunity around advanced manufacturing, which has gone ahead in leaps and bounds in terms of its technology and productivity over the sort of 3.5 decades. There's an enormous opportunity to embed manufacturing in our construction sector. We already in Victoria have about 200 prefabricated construction companies of various sizes. Most of those are making things like school buildings, health buildings, correctional facilities, and also transport buildings. And the great policy challenge for government is how do we get those capabilities that are being prefabbed off-site using manufacturing processes. Some of them are ex-auto as well and have created production lines similar to the old automotive industry. How do we embed that into our construction sector? So that's the policy challenge we're tackling at the moment. We want to get our regulations right, our building regulations, our building contracts. So they're currently all under review and we're doing a mountain of work to try and get those right. But ultimately it's about innovation and capacity in the market and working with our developers who have been doing it the same way for a very long time to try and think differently. And if, as the saying goes, don't waste a crisis, we've got an opportunity now to embed these disciplines into the construction sector, and the marriage of advanced manufacturing into construction is that opportunity. And I know that the federal government announced just before the election $58 million towards advancing prefabricated construction and modern methods of construction. I see Jack Hayes sitting in the front row from the federal government, so he's going to make sure that we get our lick of that ice cream in Victoria to ensure that we can advance the use of advanced manufacturing in construction.
I was in Chicago late last year and saw a 3D printer that was printing houses, sections of houses.
Absolutely. So additive, you mentioned additive before. I think the perception would be that additive and construction don't mix. That's far from the case. And there's an enormous upside, very strong focus of AMTIL over the years. And now with the additive manufacturing CRC, we want to make sure that construction is a big part of that scope of the work that they're going to be doing. Being able to print appliances, print key inputs, connections, etc. Huge opportunities around additive manufacturing, and great to see. We're going to see at least $116 million invested in additive manufacturing through that CRC, which is really exciting.
Thank you. Regina, can we talk about the areas of need for defence? So what are the areas that we're going to really be looking to the defence sector to provide solutions?
Yeah, absolutely, Lorraine. And Scott, you took me back to my old past life where Lorraine and I would take contingents over to bio, and we had some fun times because I'm actually a biomedical scientist by training. That brings me back to why defence, in my mind, I love the sector because it's everything, right? So we've got Saab, the deployable hospital, who produces that product here in Richmond in Victoria, right? And so all of those accesses, all those equipment and all of the things that you need for a deployable hospital, part of that is that advanced manufacturing piece. And then we've got, the tropical health components that, we're always looking for. And then, you go to something really cool like guided weapons and explosive ordnances, which is very, very different. But all the precision engineering that needs to go into developing those products is something that we also look for. $330 billion was announced by the federal government in forward spending over the next 10 years in defence. So there are opportunities, but you're going to have to, if I was an advanced manufacturer company, I'd be looking to be smart about it. And so, we've got quantum, AI, robotics, all of those things, but it's about finding the program. So we've got the SSN AUKUS, one of the future submarines, but we've also got the Virginia class, which is being produced now in the US, but the supply chain for that is very likely to come out of a lot of our companies here because they are going to supply out of Henderson in WA. So again, if you're interested in the defence sector, there's plenty of opportunities, but you've got to find your people, find your tribe, as I say. Join your local communities, find out about it, because you're going to have to get your accreditations and your DISP accreditation, those things sorted out before you enter, and that does take a little while, but the opportunities, $330 billion, are enormous.
Yeah, thank you. I was just thinking about one of our member companies, Speed 3D, is doing mobile manufacturing units to go into theatres of war. so that they can print spare parts in remote situations. It's incredible. Who knew that we needed that, but it sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome. But can I say, we've got a fantastic SME, well, they're really medium now, Moran, who are down in the Geelong area, but they partner with a group who are showcasing here, Ronson Gears, who just do one small part on that, highly successful in that one small part because they're jolly good at it. So it's about finding your sweet spot in defence, teaming with your local supplier, and then getting into that investment platform.
Yeah, great. Scott, last question is I want to ask you about the state's strategy for supporting training and the future of workforces.
Yeah, thanks, Lorraine. That's definitely a perennial challenge, and I think Jonathan touched on some of the broader initiatives and opportunities in that space. I would, for our sector, I would think what we'd point to is there's a health and medical research strategy that Victoria's put together, 2022 to 32, 10-year strategy, pretty high level, frankly, but had a lot of stakeholder engagement that helped to pull that together. And absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, the theme that came up most strongly from the sector was the issue of workforce and supporting workforce and in that. And so hence one of the actions that the state's done is to develop and released the then Minister for Medical Research, the Honourable Ben Carroll, released that late last year, the Workforce Action Plan, so out of the Health and Medical Research Strategy. And that has identified a range of different focus areas, from embedding collaboration to attracting and retaining talent, which of course is even more vitally important now, Lorraine, as you were talking about US and some of the job losses and funding losses there, is definitely a theme that's emerging. And upskilling capability, and capability is not just in the medical research institutes themselves, it's very much around industry and commercial translation and manufacturing as well, and noting that that's an important theme, and an equity and diversity sort of lens to that, particularly around regional upskilling and training as well for our sector. So that's probably the closest that we've got to a really up and thriving sector strategy. The Victorian MedTech Skills and Devices Hub, which will be at the, I think I called it the Australian Medical Research, the ACMD, which is actually the Aikenhead Centre for Medical Discovery, which is going up in St Vincent's, but that's where it'll be housed from. And it's a university partnership, and it's going to be training some 400 job-ready graduates for about 50 health tech companies. So that's a really tangible sort of thing we're putting into action, I guess, as a part of that. But it's something we're keeping a really close ear out for all the time, and looking for opportunities to work with TAFE and some of these other elements that Regina and Jonathan have been touching on as well.
Yeah, and I would add that the Victorian Skills Authority is doing some great work in that for manufacturing generally as well. That's fantastic. Thank you. Will you please join me in thanking our speakers this morning, Scott, Regina and Jonathan.